Hi, today I'm going to tell you another horror story called Rot. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss news stories. Enjoy listening. The invalid reeked of rancid sweat and urine. The poor fellow sat on a bench in an autumn park, hunched over and whining. His face was covered in purulent boils. There wasn't a single living spot. The fat hump on his back had pulled his entire jacket down, and it was impossible to button it. The invalid was terribly disfigured by the disease. A sunken chest, a belly hanging over his jeans, his left arm was missing up to the elbow, the stump stuck out of his rolled-up sleeve, as if on display, for the sake of more arms. The fingers on his right palm were so gnarled that they could barely hold the 5,000-ruble note that Constantine, who had taken pity on the cripple, had thrust through him. The freak looked at Constantine. His eye was covered with a cataract, but the cripple had not yet gone completely blind, if he was surprised by the generous handout. He sniffed, swallowed it, and lisped his thanks. Kostya froze. He was amazed at how many nightmarish deformities existed in this terrible world. And he thought to himself that the stump on the cripple's left arm did not look like a stump from a wound. But it also did not look like this man was born like this. It felt as if the poor guy had lost his arm in the course of some terrible disease, because his arm had clearly been well formed before. But at the same time there was no characteristic strip of skin on the stump that doctors leave after amputation in order to throw it over the bone and stitch it up. Kostya tore himself away from these stupid thoughts with effort. They were pulling him back. There. He wished the poor fellow good luck, picked up the heavy bags from the ground and continued on his way. The invalid muttered something after him. It seemed he advised him to be careful, not to give in to temptations, no matter how they lured him. Otherwise, he said, he could become like him. Right, thought Kostya, maybe this poor guy is a former drug addict. That's why he got bent like that, that's why he rotted. The town had grown even grayer, shaggy heating pipes, old roads with potholes in the asphalt, gray 5-story buildings with dying courtyards, and 2-story wooden barracks full of cockroaches and alcoholics. Kostya had last been to his native Kamensk a long time ago, and almost nothing had changed since then. He had just arrived by train, after several days on the road. It was barely past noon, which meant no one was home yet. His sister was at school, and his younger brother was at work. Constantine had long since lost his keys to his parents' house, wanted to take the bus, even stepped into the open doors, but saw a large crowd inside. Changed my mind, stepped back. Better to walk. It's good that the town is small, about 40,000 people, but walking on foot turned out to be uneasy too. It was somehow quiet, alarming, as if something was about to happen. I kept one of the bags open not just in case, but for the sake of inner peace. He quickly reached the cemetery on the outskirts of the city. It took much longer to find the grave. I had to wander along paths a lot, looking at the inscriptions on the tombstones. I was looking for relatively recent ones. And I found it, sighing heavily and shrinking inwardly. There she was. Mom. Looking straight at him from the photograph with a silent question. Kostya couldn't attend the funeral, which he now regretted. He loved his mother, even if sometimes he didn't even answer her calls. And he rarely called her himself. Her sobbing into the phone was a frankly shitty idea. Sobbing and lamenting only cut into his soul in vain, when he was already constantly at the limit of his capabilities. Kostya learned about her serious illness after her death. When his brother sent a message, those were simply unbearable days. Kostya almost went crazy with guilt. Then, in general, a lot fell on him, a lot collapsed and turned to ashes. As luck would have it, problems rarely come alone. His mother died of rapidly developing cancer, probably from an excess of stress and misfortune. After all, his father left the family. Disappeared, vanished. Where and why did he go? Constantine had been asking himself the same question for many months. The family was consumed by misfortunes, one after another, as if something invisible was trying to finish them all off. "Sorry, Mom," Kostya said after half an hour of this dreary meeting. He shouldered the heavy backpack, picked up the tightly packed bags from the ground and walked along the road to the exit. To his home. Kostya walked along familiar streets, and his soul became a little warmer. Each yard, each alley was a separate memory. There were friends, and first love, and fights in the neighborhood, and mystical hikes with an overnight stay on a wooded mountain behind the city reservoir, and descents into deep abandoned quarries in the suburbs in the north, and hide-and-seek with tag from evil guards at the mining and processing plant. A happy childhood. He spent his school years here. There was so much in the past, it didn't even fit in his head. As if all of this was a movie he had once watched in a cinema, and not his own life at all. Now his eyes had changed, along with the world they reflected, and now, years later, Kostya is standing in front of his home entrance again. In front of his home 5-story building, gray, unshakable and covered with graffiti advertising for local drugs. He dialed the intercom. No one answered. As expected. He hung around the entrance for a while. He met his neighbors, who recognized him with surprise. They exchanged the usual phrases. They let him into the entrance so he wouldn't freeze and invited him over for tea, but Kostya refused. He didn't want to impose himself or have a deeper conversation than "How are you? Where have you been? Well, how is it there?" Kostya settled down on the mezzanine opposite the apartment, sat on the windowsill, carefully examining the autumn yard, dotted with tall golden trees, like a real forest. These trees seemed to have been growing there since the middle of the last century, when Soviet people first came here, having discovered mineral deposits. The yard is dark, shady. It is easy to hide, to lie low, to be unseen. Especially if you are on the playground, in the very center of this forest. The rusty swings creaked in the wind. And how dared the parents let their children go into the yard if they could not see them from the windows of their houses, located along the perimeter? It was uneasy to sit by the window almost at full height. But Kostya overcame himself, throwing off the stupid and worthless obsession. True, he quickly climbed down from the windowsill, barely seeing the glare in the windows of the opposite 5-story buildings, all this from the sun, but there was nothing to be done about it. His legs themselves carried him around the nearest corner. He didn't like sitting in silence and waiting alone, as if something was about to happen. Bad thoughts crept into his head. What if they didn't come back? What if they, too, died? Or disappeared? Nonsense, of course. They corresponded only recently. Kostya drank hot tea from a thermos to warm himself up, and passers-by scurried carefree around the yard. So carefree. Happy. After a while, he spotted his little sister among them. Already an adult, a head taller than when he saw her last time. Ksyusha walked quickly into the entrance, carried away by her thoughts. She went up the steps and froze, stunned, seeing Kostya on the mezzanine. "Well, you fool, what are you standing there for? Come here." Kostya grinned. The grown-up sister whined and rushed towards me, into my arms, hung on my neck. She burst into tears. "He's back," she squealed, not believing her eyes. "He's back." "Of course." He laughed, stroking her chestnut hair. "How big you've become." "How big?" "Bandura. Did you eat little Ksyusha? Admit it." "Just kidding." "He's back." Ksyusha pulled away, loosening her tight embrace, and looked at him as if expecting a trick. "Dodger back, right?" "Of course." "Doesn't it look similar? You won't go back again, will you? It's all over, fool." "Now I'm with you." Ksyusha stuck to him again and started crying, leaving her tears on the fleece jacket. Kostya himself could barely contain himself, and so he changed the subject as soon as he felt that his voice would not creak, but would retain its cheerfulness. "You're so thin," he noted. "Don't you eat at all?" In response, there was only a vague moaning through snot. Let's go to the house, I'm already frozen waiting for you. Kostya gently patted his sister on the back and she came to life. Yes, let's go quickly. She hurried, torn between searching for keys in her pockets and trying to help her brother with his bags. I'll do it myself, Konstantin stopped her, picking up his backpack. The main thing is that you lead me, Ksyusha. I've already forgotten where our door is. The key turned in the lock, the door opened. And here was his home. For some reason he expected to feel the heat of the pies on his face and, a second after the door slammed, to see his mother at the end of the corridor, bustling about at the stove in the cozy kitchen and inviting everyone to dinner, but he was met only by the coolness of the gloomy apartment. The click of a switch. A gloomy light came on. Somewhere the wallpaper had peeled off, somewhere a corner was covered in mold. Dust was decorating the shoe racks. Someone is saving on light bulbs. Kostya chuckled. The atmosphere is like a mental hospital. Who puts cold light in the apartment? Did my brother come up with this? He's crazy. We need to fix the situation. I'll do that tomorrow. I didn't know you were coming, why didn't you tell me? Ksyusha accused him. I didn't even clean up. And I didn't cook anything to eat. Well, there was no time for that. And I didn't want you to get alarmed. But we were still alarmed. Ksyusha immediately went to the kitchen, and Kostya took the bags first to the large room that he had previously shared with his brother, thought about it, looking at how Vitya had taken over everything and rearranged it for himself, and dragged his things to his parents' far room, now free and unclaimed. He left the things he would put everything away later. He looked out the window without turning on the light. He looked around. These windows led to the opposite courtyard, smaller in size, but just as overgrown with trees. From here, one could see the evening street, along which cars were cutting. It turned out that the windows of their apartment faced both sides of the house. For some reason, Kostya had not paid much attention to this fact before. He carefully drew the curtains in all the rooms so that no one could see them. In the kitchen, my sister was embarrassed there was nothing to make dinner from, only sandwiches. Like Vitya will come home from work and bring pelmeni, so that's what you eat. Just dumplings and sandwiches? Soon the street lights will be able to see right through you. Kostya made a quick foray to the nearest store, bought meat, vegetables and spices for kashlama. He left without a bag at all, he couldn't carry it around with him everywhere. They would say he was crazy. Perhaps that's true, by the way. It was unusual without gear. Kostya felt naked and defenseless. I got home without incident. Of course. I opened the tap and started filling the cauldron with water. Ksyusha immediately intervened. She said to immediately throw all this crap out of the cauldron. Kostya was even confused. This water is disgusting, she said. Just don't use it for broth. Don't spoil the meat. And don't drink it. Take it from the bottle. The tap water really did smell bad. It even stank. Of something indefinite. Ksyusha said that they only drank clean store-bought water because the water in the reservoir, from which the pipes ran, had become strange lately. Rumor had it that something had been dumped there from the plant. Something clearly bad. She advised them to rinse the cauldron with bottled water. They had stocked up on 5-liter bottles in the pantry, it seemed, in case of the apocalypse. Kostya washed the cauldron and brought a couple of bottles for cooking, the water with meat boiled. The apartment was filled with the smell of aromatic kashlama. Ksyusha helped chop vegetables and kept sobbing. When asked about her father and mother, she only started sobbing again. We had to change the topic to things at school and in town. The death of her mother had clearly thrown the girl off track. Added to this was the departure of her father. In addition, the 11th grade was coming soon. Important exams were coming up, which she couldn't fail if she didn't want to stay in this hopeless hole and ruin her life. In order to escape from Kamensk, she had to earn a higher score and get into a state-funded place, get a place in a dormitory, and even in some decent city, where she could then find a normal job. Ksyusha's studies weren't going well, which she talked about reluctantly. She had been a good student before. Brother arrived late. He clicked the key in the lock and turned. The door opened. A skinny sleeper looks into the distance from the darkness of the corridor, his glasses flashing. He squints, glasses wearing. "Great," he says. "There are cakes in the bag," Ksyusha had already managed to blurt out and write, so there was no surprise. They shook hands firmly and hugged. "How are you?" asked a gloomy Vidya. "I want to crawl under the windowsills. But otherwise it's fine," Kostya chuckled. The kashlama was poured into plates. The broth was thick and aromatic, the meat was soft and melted in the mouth, the vegetables were sweet and sour, beautiful, and the greens decorated the dish and pleased the eye. "This is the most delicious thing I've ever tasted." Ksyusha, however, burned her tongue. "Not bad," Vidya agreed. "I didn't know you were a good cook, too. Anyone can boil meat." Konstantin waved his hand dismissively. Kashlama was almost intoxicating. Blood seemed to be running from the head to the stomach to digest it all. Thoughts became fewer and happier. But the conversation with his brother somehow did not start. Vidya wanted to ask something, but he could not bring himself to. Kostya had to lead the conversation himself. However, he did not hear anything new. They were corresponding, and Kostya knew that Vidya had recently managed to graduate from university, that he then returned to Kamensk and got a job at the local vape shop. Right after the death of his mother, now he also smoked, that is, vaped. Like a steam locomotive. Kostya joked about a rubber woman. But it came out somehow harshly. He forgot that he was not talking to his guys, but to his young brother, who shaved his temples and parting more often than the fluff under his nose. "It's a good cake," Kostya praised. Vidya looked at him warily. As if he had come from another world, as if he were something alien, a nightmare, a monster that only pretended to be human and could at any moment turn into something terrible, opening its predatory mouth. And for some reason this hurt. Kostya felt some kind of wall. Ksyusha soon went to her room. She said she had to study, but Vidya noticed that she had probably gone to play her games, for another siege, which happened at that time every day. "Do you mind?" Vidya took out his vape. "I object, but smoke." Now there was no need to limit the topics of conversation so as not to offend Ksyusha. "So what exactly happened to Dad?" Kostya finally asked. "Where did he disappear to?" Vidya took a drag and released a white cloud. "He just up and left," he said. "He took some money from his mother's stash. And he took off." "You already said that." "But where and why, don't know. Is he at least alive?" "Probably. We haven't seen him for a long time, by the way. And I don't really care. Let him die." "Choose your words carefully." Kostya frowned. "He is our father." "You just didn't see what was here," Vidya waved it off. "But I saw it." "And what happened?" "Mother's completely worn out," said Vidya. "It's because of him that she died so quickly. Cancer. It's all from nerves. She loved him very much, and he just up and left." She turned gray right there. "And anyway, we all loved him. And we still do. He did the wrong thing, I won't argue. But there must be a reason? He left for another woman? If only," snorted Vidya. "He got into a sect." "To a sect?" "He got involved with some people. He started spending more time with them. They played something. Some board game, I think, it doesn't matter. And gradually they brainwashed him. He tried to treat us later. I tried to convince him otherwise. I gave him logical arguments that it was a cult, that they were fooling him. His mother also argued. But in these arguments, it seemed, he only became more convinced that he was right." "What kind of people? Can you show me specifically?" "I would like to talk to them," Vidya snorted, imagining how his brother would speak. "I didn't see them. Father didn't bring them home. I would have gladly taken you to them. You would have dealt with them quickly, right? I would have trampled on their heads too. You, sleeper, will soon be blown away by the wind, thought Kostya, and he himself said, What did the cops do? Did you contact the police? What will they do? He didn't go missing. He just left. Of his own free will. They didn't even bother to look into it. There are millions of people like him all over the country. You didn't call Vlad? Of course he called. But he's not an investigator, he's a police officer. What will he do? Go and twist a free, law-abiding man in his rotten trough? Kostya sighed heavily. Anger was growing somewhere inside, but there was nowhere to release it. He left because, added Vidya, we were hindering his development on the path to truth. God forbade them to associate with unfaithful offspring. Nonsense. Something that contradicts love for one's own children cannot come from God. Are you telling me this? Grinned Vidya, who had become a rabid atheist almost since elementary school, as soon as he started reading books. It seems like my father was a very smart man. Almost a scientist. But then he fell for some bullshit. I'm already in shock myself. How is that possible? I didn't expect it. They know how to brainwash people. They have whole schemes there. They would have even brainwashed you and me if they wanted to. Personally, I have a nose for scams. How many times have pyramids and witnesses come? It only seems that way. Everyone thinks that way. And then this happens. And you can't do anything about it. They gradually change your mind. They sat at the table in silence for a few minutes. Kostya thought about what he had heard and thought about how to find the priest and how to pull him out of the sect. And how to find and close down this sect in general. If not by legal means, then by fair ones. Just don't do anything bad. Vidya read these thoughts on his brother's face. You never know. Our family fell apart because of these faggots, said Kostya. What do you mean, who knows? You can't bring your father back, accept it. He's not the same as you knew him, believe me. He abandoned us, and he'll abandon you too. The main thing is that we stayed, that we're together. Right. If you don't feel sorry for yourself, then feel sorry for Ksyusha. If they put you in jail later, she'll completely wither. She's already withered. Today she was still happy, more or less. Like before. But now she's completely withdrawn into herself. And I wouldn't want you to go to prison, Kostya exhaled, wiping his face with his palms. Malloy is right. And wrong at the same time. He turned to the sink to pour himself a glass of water and wash down his thirst. Don't even think about it. Vidya stopped him. Exactly, Kostya came to his senses. The water is dirty. This water can only be used to wash away shit. Even the filters at the water intake don't help. It looks like they dumped something finely dispersed. Or some kind of chemicals. What does she smell like? Something poisonous? It looks poisonous, yes. It smells like rot. Exactly. Don't even wash your face with it. The skin turns gray and peels. Don't even wash yourself in the shower. We heat up store-bought water in a saucepan and wash ourselves in basins. Have you seen how many flasks we bought? They're in the pantry. What nonsense. Why isn't anyone from the city making a fuss? Let them get water from somewhere else. Firstly, if you yelp, you'll be fired immediately. We're like rats on a ship here, locked in, but we have to live somehow. And secondly, many people just don't care. They've already gotten a taste. They wash and drink. They say it's fine for them. It's only us who are disgusted. And then there are the young people, like me. There aren't many here who are smarter than a cork. The evening flew by quickly, night fell, the moon peeked out from behind the curtains. Vidya sat down to do his own thing, to rest. He hid behind the laptop monitor. Conversations could be heard from Ksyusha's room. Not really like lessons. It seemed Vidya was right about the games. Constantine went into his parents' room and started to unpack his things, but then decided that it would be better to keep all this stuff in the bags. More practical and safer. He only put out the most unnecessary things. Their hands were itching unimaginably after the story about the sect. Some bastards just went and destroyed their family. Essentially, killed their mother. And how can they sleep now with such thoughts? Put up with it. So what to do next? Here he is back. But life moves on and something needs to be thought of. Go to a bigger city? Return to the construction site as a foreman? No, he is still needed here. The little ones could use some support. They are the most precious thing he has left. Let Ksyusha finish school first, and then we'll see. And he didn't want to go to a big city. Get a job here? Not so fast. Really, he needs to catch his breath. Besides, his savings and solid monthly payments will be enough for now. So he can party hard, enjoying life. If, of course, he hasn't forgotten how to do it yet. The home phone rang unexpectedly. Who needed to call at almost midnight? It's a good thing no one was asleep. To be honest, Kostya started to panic when he heard the sharp sound, so he went to the phone angry and agitated. Vitya picked up the phone first. He was much closer to the corridor. And why would Kostya pick up the home phone and answer the call? It was unlikely to be for him. Hello, said Vitya. Yes. He turned his gaze to Kostya, who was standing in the doorway. Yes, he's right here. Right now. Vitya held out the phone. Me? Kostya was surprised. Who? The police are calling, answered the brother, unsuccessfully trying to keep a very serious expression on his face. Joker, it's clear. Hello? Constantine shouted into the trumpet as if he were stepping out in front of a line of guilty recruits. Who's calling me in the middle of the night? Sorry, they answered from the other side. Why didn't you even call when you arrived, huh? Haven't you had a moose registered for a long time, or am I missing something? What are you, cop, wanting to register me? Kostya laughed. I want to shoot an arrow. If you don't chicken out, well, try it. Let's see what you're up to. Tomorrow at the suitcase, at 8 in the evening, said Vladislav. Just like the good old days. Which suitcase is this in? What's wrong with you, Kostian? It seems like we have a small town here. There's only one suitcase. You mean that suitcase? Come alone. We'll come alone too. Who else will be there? Ilyuka. Oops. Since when does Ilyuka hang around in places like this? From tomorrow. Does he himself know about this? He'll find out. I haven't called him yet. Got it. And how did you find out that I had arrived? Verified sources reported. Who is this? Your neighbors reported it. What, do you think you live in a vacuum? The earth is round, and Kamensk is small, as they say. Who says this? You. Why not? That's it, fuck off. You're distracting me with your conversations, said Vlad. I need to be spinning monkeys in another whorehouse. Go ahead. Zoo worker. Go ahead, your ass is bigger. Sweet dreams to you too. Asshole. Vlad chuckled cheerfully and hung up the phone. A short conversation with an old friend abruptly switched to a completely different wave, much more positive and joyful. So before the devils returned, Kostya hurried to fall asleep. He slept, surprisingly, not badly. But at 5 in the morning he opened his eyes. It was too quiet. The ringing in the ears in such silence increased many times and pressed on the skull. And it began to creep up. You slept well only until there were no dreams. Then it was better not to sleep. He looked out from behind the curtain. The darkness of the night enveloped the streets, poorly lit by lanterns, often broken. What was there in the yard among the trees? What was there in the dark windows of the houses opposite? Who was hiding? Was anyone watching from there? Visibility was also greatly reduced by the fog that had rolled over the city. Kostya pulled the bag closer to himself. It became calmer. He opened the books and read in the dim light, trying to pay special attention. This also switched things off well. The most important thing was to hold out until dawn. It was already getting easier. The nights only get longer in autumn. It would be better if the return fell in summer. We'll have to somehow survive the rest of autumn and the whole winter. Gloomy and unkind, Ksyusha woke up first. She was getting ready for school, rumpled and swollen, with dark circles under her eyes, as if she hadn't slept half the night either. Kostya made some toast. He almost splashed some rotten tap water into the kettle. He still can't get used to it. Vitya woke up a little later. The store where he worked opened at 10 and was a 5-minute walk away. Vitya didn't even bother to drive his wreck, which he promised to show when he had some free time. When asked if he wasn't ashamed to sell legalized drugs to people, Vitya replied that at least the work wasn't dusty, unlike plowing at the plant, and the schedule was 2 for 2. And Kostya, he said, had gone too far with the drug. What kind of drug was that? It was just nicotine. It didn't cause hallucinations. And you could quit at any time. Out of boredom, Kostya began to tidy up the house. He changed the light bulbs from pale to warm, pasted over the wallpaper, and treated the moldy corner with special chemicals. It's strange, by the way, about the mold. The apartment wasn't so humid for it to start. Kostya froze when he went out onto the balcony to look for tools. The ATGM stood on a tripod right in the middle of the balcony, its tube facing the window, as if expecting enemy armor, and around it were neatly laid out boxes, signs, and strange maps. An equipped anti-tank position right next to his house. What the hell, are you going crazy? And so it turned out, a roof. When Kostya looked more closely, he realized that there was a decent-sized telescope on the balcony, and not an ATGM at all. Kostya laughed nervously. Looks like my brother got it. He was always interested in these topics. Out of curiosity, I aimed my telescope at the summit. That was the name for a small undeveloped hill park behind the school right in the center of the city, around which the micro-districts were built in rings. The cell tower on the summit looked upside down and the telescope inconvenient, which meant my brother was unlikely to be spying on women. Otherwise, he would have bought a refractor. It seemed like he really only looked at the stars. Pervert. The magnification was amazing. You could see the branches of distant trees. That's how it is. You look at a person walking along the paths of the summit, and he doesn't even suspect that someone is sitting a few kilometers away who is watching him closely. A great thing. The whole city will be in the palm of your hand if you occupy the right height. Evening came quickly. Kostya had just finished all the repair work. He got dressed up and went to the meeting. He got there on foot. His legs demanded walking, and he wanted to walk around places he hadn't been to for a long time. The city had changed only slightly, and it seemed to have become less crowded. It was dying out, after all. Production had been greatly reduced, which meant there was less work too. Vladislav was standing at the entrance, his bomber jacket casually open. He was energetically pontificating about something, straightening his shoulders and gesticulating with wide waves. The cigarette was smoldering uselessly in his fingers, never reaching his mouth. Against his background, Ilya looked like a hunchbacked and downtrodden schoolboy in a hoodie, a long-haired boy. It seemed he couldn't explain to himself what he had forgotten that evening on the steps at the entrance to Chemodan. "Hey boys! Do you have any small change?" Kostya barked from the darkness. Ilyuka even got a little scared, feeling the pepper vodka in his pocket. But a smile immediately appeared on Vlad's square forehead. He recognized the voice of his old friend. "Aren't you getting confused, sir?" he asked, spitting affectedly at his feet. "What kind of lads are we here? We're respectable, intelligent people, damn it!" A deafening clap of handshake followed. The nearby windows barely stayed in their frames, and Ilyuka was almost knocked down by the shock wave. Well, all three of them certainly had a ringing in their ears, and their palms were burning, but no one showed it. The proximal phalanges clenched and cracked. "Well, buddy? Welcome home," I'm glad to see you, said Vlad, not letting go of his hand. And I love you too, guys. Intelligent people, that is. Ilyukin's handshake was much weaker, limp, dull, as if he had grabbed a rotten fish just as raw. After all, a person's character is reflected in a handshake, and a lot can be determined just by greeting. Vlad threw the cigarette butt into the trash can, slapped Kostya and Ilyuka on the backs, and the three entered the suitcase. Music. Cozy light. The steady hum of companies, each gathered at their own table. It smelled of fried meat, beer, and hookah. Old friends found a free place and settled in. The girls were dancing to some stupid song, already tipsy. Laughing, happy. They were huddled together in one place, as if there was not enough space around. For a second it became disgusting, as if he saw a feast during the plague, but Kostya brushed these thoughts away in time. Vlad, with just his smile, called over the most beautiful waitress. They ordered food and beer. Kostya, however, preferred cocoa instead of alcohol. Vlad grimaced. It seemed to him that he had heard something wrong. Cocoa? He laughed, perplexed. With marshmallows. Vlad even grunted. It's a good drink, said the unperturbed waitress, quite seriously. I thought we'd have a good bang. For your return. Yes, I would definitely have a drink. And more than once. Kostya answered. But the hangover afterwards is terrible. Yes, I understand, age is not the same. 29 years old, already old age. But you can have a couple of beers with your buddies. Nothing will happen. Come on, bro, have a beer or something more interesting. I'd better not drink, said Kostya. Vlad wanted to ask something, but suddenly became serious, realizing something. Really, he said. Didn't think about it, bro. That's it, I won't pester you anymore. And I think I'll get fucked to my heart's content today in honor of the holiday. You're already fucking around without the holidays. Ilyuka chuckled, but he also ordered a beer, otherwise why would he leave his house and go outside? And he's not the best conversationalist when he's sober. The waitress ran to the kitchen after taking the order. I'm just fed up with these humanoids. Vlad gasped. I need to relax, otherwise I'll go crazy. Humanids? Well, you talked about monkeys yesterday. It's different. First it was with monkeys, at the beginning of the night. But those were ordinary monkeys. And closer to the morning, humanoids begin to appear. There's no other way to call them. Fuck, what's the difference? Monkeys may be monkeys, but they are from our planet. And the others got so drunk and stoned that they became humanoids. They don't understand anything in our language anymore. Sometimes we even have to take clubs. Soon the waitress brought shashlik with beer. Vlad drank the first mug in one gulp, on an empty stomach, to step into the holiday faster. Ilya sipped the beer slowly, but quite confidently. Kostya took the meat first. Conversations began. Vlad and Kostya recalled how they climbed abandoned quarries together, how they went up the mountain behind the reservoir, how they built a raft for sailing, and how they made bombs, at first harmless ones, from cardboard batteries, as if there was something to explode in, and then quite offensive ones from match heads between nuts and bolts. And when did Ilyuka find out about the carbide? They stole half a bucket from the welders, remember? Vlad laughed. And I stole a flask from the bathhouse from my granny. That was when I got shell-shocked for the first time, laughed Kostya, remembering how that flask exploded in the fire. We almost went deaf. Vlad was grimacing, as if he had returned to childhood. The remains of the flask flew 100 meters. Then my granny gave me such a beating, I still remember it. Yes, those were happy times, carefree. Everyone knew each other since elementary school. Kostya was never really friends with Ilya. For him, he was always just a good acquaintance who sometimes tagged along with them on parties. He was always too different. Unsociable and strange. But Vlad was good friends with Ilyuka. These two had a strange symbiosis. They were too different. They probably say that opposites attract. The friendship did not disappear over the years. Although Ilyuka always tried to hide at home, Ilya worked remotely. Having specifically found a job that suited his temperament, Vlad joked that if he had worked hard at a normal job, he would have been shot to death with a shotgun straight to the head long ago. With his difficult character, he still hasn't found a woman. Vlad laughed, throwing back another mug of beer. Still a virgin, I guess, the loser. He'll soon become a wizard. He'll start shooting fire from his hands. You've started talking about your own thing again. Ilyuka rolled his eyes. I already had a girlfriend. Maria Ladishkina. When I was studying in the city, there was. So what's the point? I'm not very interested in these things. More harm than good. Bedtime stories. Vlad continued to tease him. How can you prove it? You didn't even send her photos, but you send her your anime all the time. Oh, shut up already, you're really annoying me. Ilyuka waved him off, taking a sip of beer. These conversations angered him the most. There are no normal girls here. In this village, don't be offended, bro, I was just joking. You need to be shaken up sometimes, otherwise you'll get completely moldy in your shack. Look, they're dancing, do you see? Vlad pointed at the girls. Let's go and dance. Let's ask them to play a slow dance and let's dance. They're probably stupid, Ilyuka winced. What should I talk to them about? What makes you think they're stupid? Vlad sighed. You didn't even talk to them. You can tell by their faces. They have rural faces. But look at their asses. You invite a not-so-ugly lady to dance, and then a tango or a foxtrot. Can you do it? And it's a shame you can't. You can grope her for free, a few words here and there, and then a spark ignites or not, you go to another one and check by touch, is there anything hanging off that lady? And then you go home if everything is okay. Oh, you loser! You shouldn't engage in philosophy with girls. Ilyuka! But in something else, how can you not understand bestiality? Ilyuka insisted. Do it yourself if you like it. It seems like they both haven't changed at all over the years. They still argue. Especially when they're drunk. It's understandable with Ilyuka. But Vlad also couldn't find a wife, even though he was a civilian all this time. But not because he couldn't, he just loved to have fun too much. He said that he would definitely start cheating, but he didn't want to offend anyone. Why, he said, stop at one when there are so many beautiful girls around? Vlad, the only one of the three, failed to escape Kamensk and get a decent education, so, as soon as he returned from the army, he went straight to the police, where he has been working for several years now. Kostya tried not to talk about himself. But old friends were persistent. What happened there, Kostian? Vlad asked. Yes, this is definitely much more interesting than another discussion of my virginity, Ilyuka agreed with him. Nothing special, Konstantin replied. I don't think it's a great topic for conversation. Total depressiveness. Death, destruction. Atrocities. What else can you say about the war? You heard it all on TV yourself. Everything, but not everything, said Vlad. It's one thing from TV, another from a participant. From a buddy. Although, of course, those who didn't participate won't understand. But it's interesting. It's true that he won't understand. And I don't want you to understand, said Konstantin, growing gloomier with each word. That's definitely not what you need. Got it, bro, got it, said Vlad. You know, the main thing is to know that you have us, your buddies. If anything happens, we'll help, we'll support. The main thing is don't keep it to yourself. You can tell us everything. We're like psychotherapists, only free. Heh, sounds like a toast, said Kostya, raising his cocoa with marshmallows. They sat in silence for a while, searching for new topics for conversation. After another glass of beer, Vlad squinted, looking somewhere into the depths of the establishment. He assumed a conspiratorial and cunning look. Look, he said, pointing to the corner of the board games. What monkeys are sitting there? There's just enough for all of us. Oh my god. Ilyuka sighed, anticipating another uninvited adventure. For girls playing board games. And they clearly lacked participants for a much more fun game. Kostin's gaze stopped on a pretty blonde. Well, Kostin? With Ilyuka everything is clear, he prefers palms. Ilya wanted to answer something, but remained silent. That's how they recruited my dad, Kostya suddenly remembered. He also played board games. Wasn't it here by any chance? Who the hell knows, but I doubt it. I come here quite often. Not every day, but I haven't seen him here. By the way, before we move to them, answer me a couple of questions. Go ahead, said Vlad. Why did you refuse to look for my father? It wasn't me who refused, said Vlad. That's the first thing. And secondly, there was no crime. What's there to investigate? Your dad left on his own, just like that. It was completely legal. Legal? And the fact that a sect is operating in the city, is that also legal? That's right, Ilyuka agreed. What sect? I don't understand them. Do you think I understand? There are Jehovah's Witnesses in the city, banned. But they hide, and therefore there is no charge against them. At the moment, what sect did my dad join? The Witnesses? I don't know that either. Your people gave evidence they themselves didn't know anything. And how will we find out then? Out of thin air? That's not how things are done. Why didn't you start an investigation? They could have been banned sections. There's your loophole. You could have started liquidating them. There's no composition. Vlad spread his hands. Believe me, bro. If I were an investigator, I'd put my hand to the case. I'd sink my teeth into it. But I'm a patrolman. I can't do anything. And my word doesn't carry much weight at the station. Especially lately. Kostya sighed, but nodded his head understandingly. Just don't get mad, Vlad said, feeling guilty. We'll think of something. What goes around comes around. And these sectarians have sown some fucking wrong seeds in our garden beds, and we'll definitely take them by the ass yet. Yes, I understand everything. Don't worry about it. I'm just angry I only found out the details yesterday. I haven't recovered yet. Then let's go. We need to unwind. Before some humanoids or monkeys join those beauties instead of us. And don't worry. These are regular board games. No one will recruit you, Vlad chuckled. Probably. Ilya stubbornly refused. He did not want to sit down at the table with the girls. He was even going to sneak home, just to avoid awkward situations. But Vlad would not be his friend if he did not know the poor guy's weak points. He pressed on the most painful spots, grabbed him by the show-off. In the end, Ilya agreed to join the ladies, but only to play a game. To this, Vlad replied that he and Kostian would get more. The rogue Vlad, despite being a bit drunk, suddenly showed miracles of politeness and charisma, and so the girls did not object and greeted the guys with laughter. They really did not have enough people for a fun game. The more participants, the more interesting it was to play something. They got acquainted, listed their names. Kostya's eyes met those of the blonde. Her hair was just below her shoulders, and she looked like a cute little bird. A barely noticeable charming smile flashed across her lips. Was she talking to him? She looked away and straightened her hair. His throat even went dry. It was surprising that some girls were able to make him so excited. After all, it would seem, shooting with eyes from under long eyelashes is no worse than shelling. He immediately forgot her name. It flew out of his head. I had the feeling that I was not just about to play a game, but was about to go on the offensive. Vlad, like a good machine gunner, paved the way for the rest of his comrades, excellently covering the clearing with a verbal hail and intercepting the initiative. Kostya, trying not to get too lost, gradually got closer, using reliable cover. Ilya played the role of a pale recruit, who only occasionally shot in the direction of his interlocutors, as they say, in Somali style, hiding behind dense shelters and thinking only about how to escape. A lively conversation ensued. The game itself was not difficult. Almost like Mafia, only with some twists in the form of cards. Kostya was immediately assigned to be a monster. He had to infect the survivors and, at the same time, try not to be burned by a flamethrower. They killed him, however, quickly. The experienced girls were not playing this board game for the first time. Vlad was surprised that he hadn't met these beauties here yet. Vlad preferred to keep silent about why he knew most of the beauties of Kamensk, but he managed to remember the blonde. She worked as a therapist at the local clinic. Natalia. Her girlfriends were no less pretty, and so Vlad, having assessed where Kostyan's gaze was mostly directed, decided to distribute the front accordingly. He took her girlfriends on himself. He tried to draw Ilyuka into the conversation, who would suit a slightly plump girl in glasses, the best, probably the smartest, and also an anime fan. Vlad decided. They would suit each other perfectly. He himself soon seemed to be taken in by the chatterbox with the saucer-like eyes. She laughed loudly at every joke, more than all the others put together, but Vlad paid more attention to the silent, modest girl with the big ass. It was a strange board game, of course, but Ilya suddenly really liked the game. He quickly got involved in the process. It's based on a movie. A classic. You seriously haven't watched it? Ilya was surprised when Vlad and Kostya shook their heads. He was addressing the boys strictly, as if the girls weren't there. I envy you. The girls said that they had once planned to watch this film, but they were put off by the year it was released. You can't watch old stuff when you can go see a normal film with good special effects. Ilya gave the girls such a disdainful look, as if he had become completely disillusioned with the female sex. Plump Sveta and modest Alya were finishing their studies at the local sharaga. They were much younger than the guys, although they looked very grown up. Only chatty Irina came to visit her relatives while she was on vacation. She was the same age as Natalia, and her main friend, another man, who had been bored at a table not far from them until now, came to the noise of the fun. Kostya noticed how he had been eyeing their company for a long time. The man asked if they were accepting new players, and the girls immediately invited him to the table. Before Vlad could brush him off, the man looked much more decent than all of them. Slicked back hair, a white shirt, a tie and suspenders gave him a certain noirishness. Girls really like such guys. Fashionistas were never liked in Kamensk. In their time, Kostya and Vlad stopped them in the alleys. But soon Vlad calmed down. Yen did not make grins at the girls, but rather sought to immerse himself in the game itself, and chat about all sorts of things. Yen did not turn out to be intrusive or impudent, on the contrary, quite a pleasant and decent conversationalist. He really liked the game, the idea itself. He said that such things were very close to his soul. In addition, he sponsored the hookah, apparently as a token of gratitude for letting him in. The fun continued further, gaining momentum, already in smoke rings and tornadoes, which Irina created with the zeal of a stovepipe, apparently demonstrating to Vlad the abilities of her mouth and hands. Vlad told stories from his work. How he took suicide bombers off roofs and towers. How he broke up noisy and rowdy groups. How he fought and twisted bulls. How he went out on people with machine guns instead of riot police, and how he checked suspicious objects instead of bomb disposal experts. He was indignant that too much in this city was blamed on them, on the PPS guys. Fortunately, the machine gunners turned out to be just passing airsoft players who scared the pensioners, and the suitcases left on the sidewalks and bus stops were empty. Alcoholics, hooligans, drug addicts, Vlad said. Our city must be protected from all of them, so that you, lovely ladies, are safe on the streets. Oh, it must be hard work. The girls said. It's tough, but not the toughest. Vlad couldn't complain about his job in Kostya's presence. But good health too. It's enough to make some people's flasks whistle. That's why it seems like we're rude and tactless. As if we, the police, sense the authorities. That's the kind of professional deformation, but in my opinion you're just a sweetheart. Irina objected. You just haven't seen me on duty yet. I want to see. Is there any way to arrange my arrest? If you behave too badly, then why not? I'll take you to the monkey house, you'll meet the local humanids. To the monkey house? And you don't have any more comfortable places to arrest? Irina grinned. There is one. Vlad thought about his bed. But it's not that easy to get there. Irina most brazenly blew a smoke ring straight at Vlad. And then with her fingers she gave the ring the shape of a heart. Holy shit! Vlad was genuinely surprised. I'll get married, the big-bottomed Alya, whom Vlad was trying to hit on, kept glancing at Kostya. She kept hiding her gaze as soon as he turned around. Sometimes Alya would deliberately play along with him in a board game. But Kostya was too carried away by Natasha. It seemed to him that some kind of spark had passed between them. He was drawn to Natasha. She radiated a pleasant warmth. He wanted to grab her by the hands and lead her away from this noisy company, to walk with her under the moon and stars. The weather was clear. But Kostya still couldn't bring himself to take more decisive action. It seemed that then he would rush and ruin everything. Vlad left Alya, switching to the much more proactive Irishka. They even sat closer. The girls hardly talked to Ilya, he was too strange for them, and he himself did not make any attempts to pick anyone up. After just a couple of games, Jan grasped the essence of the game and became invincible. He very quickly identified something and burned it with a flamethrower, skillfully using the cards in his hands. In this, he even surpassed the nerd Ilyuka, who played seriously. Holy shit! Vlad laughed when Jan burned him. It's impossible to play with you. Are you a psychic or something? You're ruining all the fun, you just don't try, Jan smiled. The game is simple. And you lie badly and hide badly. That's because we're too honest. Personally, as a law enforcement officer, I'm happy with that. With my honesty. Vlad raised his mug of beer, as if making a toast, and tipped it down his throat. But when Jan got a monster card, it was more fun to play. Until everyone realized that if the survivors didn't win again, it was only because there was no one left to reveal the monsters. Let's go have a smoke, Ilya suggested repeatedly. What, you miss a hookah? Vlad asked. But in the end, the guys decided to go out onto the porch. Jan offered his Cuban cigars, an exotic that was hard for the smokers to refuse. Kostya joined the guys. He just stood nearby, participating in the conversations while they smoked. In the fresh air, everyone began to sober up. I'm screwed tomorrow, Vlad admitted, taking a drag on his cigar. I've drunk so much and smoked so much. I can feel my body getting clogged. You can't live like this, guys. There's so much time already. I need to wind things down little by little. A couple more games and I'll grab Irishka. By the tangerine. Or she'll grab me. Ha ha. She's already lathering up for me. She was whispering in my ear that her mom was at home, and that she came to visit. Yeah. It's a shame it wasn't Alka. Have you seen her ass? Here are my tomatoes. Kostian, it seems Alka has fallen for you, you bitch. Lucky guy. I like Natasha better. Alya is too young for me. Vlad shrugged. Not a bad option, yes. And what are you talking about, small? Legal, that's the most important thing. Ha ha, okay guys, I'm going home, Ilya said after a couple of minutes. Just say that you were just looking for a reason to leave. Why didn't you hit on Sveta? Have you seen her snout? Ilyuka winced. She's quite pretty, what are you talking about? You're a loser. Ilya said goodbye to everyone, casually waved off Vlad, who had managed to annoy the poor guy during the evening, thanked Yen for a tasty cigar, he had never smoked one like that before, and disappeared into the city darkness, among the broken lanterns. Tomorrow is my shift, Vlad sighed. I'm so fed up. Kostian! Let's go to our police station. Here you have stability, early retirement, and a social package. We don't have many people, only 3 in the city. We don't have time to process everything. Let's go to our place. We're just looking. No, bro, Kostya answered, looking at the sky. If I'm going to work, I want to do something with my own hands. Well, buddy, Vlad was disappointed. It would be really cool if we went on shifts together. That would be fun. Spinning bulls together. Night adventures. No, Vlad. I don't want to work in the security forces. It's a pity, Jan suddenly intervened, clearly disappointed. People like you, Konstantin, are worth their weight in gold to us. Kostya quickly frowned and glanced at Yen. He was serenely smoking and looking at the sleeping 5-story buildings. Like me? He asked again. It seemed as if Jan did not immediately understand whether this question was addressed to him. Well, yes, he said. Professionals in their field, real talents. Kostya didn't remember telling this guy about his profession. He didn't tell details even to his friends, even to his family. Worth its weight in gold. And with us, where is that? Vlad giggled. In your barbershop, or what? Where they bring order and protect people from evil, Jan answered calmly, without taking his eyes off the 5-story buildings. Thebos, thought Kostya. Exactly. Thebos. Otherwise, how could this devil know anything about him? Vlad chuckled. He was clearly interested in the dude's answer. Where did you get these cigars? He asked. They cost a lot of money. Are you a rich kid? I'm not complaining about the salary, answered Jan, blowing out smoke. But I can't call him a rich kid. If it's tobacco, then I think you should get good tobacco. That's how it should be in everything. How profound. Vlad nodded, taking a drag. And who did you decide to hit on? It seems you haven't hit on anyone. Come on, Jan chuckled. I'm here to relax, not for women. For the sake of relaxation? Vlad asked and chuckled. Not for the sake of interrogations? Who? Vlad rhymed. Where did you even come from? I haven't seen you here yet. I'm just passing through. Jan replied. It's a beautiful area, mountains, forests, a reservoir. It's nice to take a walk. You could say I'm a tourist. Tourist? On business or what? What are you digging here? You could say that, Jan agreed, chuckling. I saw it right away. You're lying in our language. You can't hide things like that, it's in your subconscious, all these words. If you came here, it was for a reason, 100%. Where do you work? FSB, I suppose? I commend you for your observation, Jan chuckled. But no. I'm a detective. A private one. You know too much for a private person, Vlad said. What are you investigating? Did someone here lose their lavender wreath? Local affairs, Jan drawled. Somewhat mysteriously and vaguely. But I can't tell you much. Understand, that's what the approach requires. Don't tell me too much, tell me a little then, suggested Kostya. Jan chuckled again, but I thought about it. Alas, I don't even know what to tell you without harming my business. On the contrary, I would first ask you more questions. You ask too many questions. Vlad sucked on his cigar harder than usual. You're too curious, especially about our cops. From the very beginning I wanted to ask why you were like that. Even while playing the board game. Were you asking about the cops on business? On business. I need information from reliable sources. And I would especially like to talk to you, Vlad. I trust you. Of course, strictly confidentially. Vlad looked at Yen more closely, squinted. He examined him, illuminated him through and through, as if with an internal scanner. He thought, moved his half-drunk brain. Came to some conclusions. Nodded. Again sucked on the cigar. Go ahead. Go ahead. Asked your answers. How about tomorrow? Even like this. Vlad became serious. Well, let's do it tomorrow. if I don't change my mind. We'll write and decide when I find some free time. I have work tomorrow. Just let's talk carefully. Got it? Understand. Kostya understood little from this strange conversation. He especially didn't understand why Vlad insisted on talking to some idiot from the mountains, who wasn't even an official. He was probably drunk, that's why he gave his contacts, his business though. Konstantin didn't like Jan. No one likes it when strangers know more about you than you do about them. I suggest we return to the suitcase, said Vlad. Otherwise our girls will cool off. I think I'll go home too, said January. Have a nice time. I hope we'll meet again. Yeah. You too, stay healthy, said Vlad. They shook hands and parted. They returned to the table. The girls waved their hands. They laughed. Where is that one? The cute one? Asked Irishka. Ilyuka or something? Vlad was surprised, sitting down at the table. No. The slick one. Well, and Ilya went somewhere? Children's time is over, Vlad explained. They ran off to sleep. Irina? Ha! I invite you to dance. Get your butt up, no objections accepted. Irina laughed, clapped her big eyes, and happily agreed. Fine. Just without the use of force, without arrest and truncheon. It'll happen as it happens, said Vlad. I can't always control my club. Especially when I'm dancing with a beauty. The drunk girls laughed. Vlad winked at Kostya, hinting that he should also invite his. But he didn't have time. Natalia started wailing, came to her senses. Looking at her watch, after all, it really was too late. Annoyance. Kostya still offered her a dance. I'd be happy to, Natasha said, giving him a tender smile. But I have to go to work tomorrow, and I still have to walk the dog. I completely forgot myself. He'll be writhing there without me now. Total bummer. Looks like she just turned him down. Come dance with me. Alia suddenly intervened. And you can't refuse a girl, especially a shy and fragile one. Bye-bye, girls. Natalia said goodbye to everyone, and graced Kostya with her glance. It was nice to meet you. Likewise, Kostya muttered. He and Olenka went out onto the dance floor, while plump Sveta remained sitting alone. She was the one who was really unlucky today. Vlad and Irina danced with all their might. They did it beautifully and energetically. Konstantin could only dance slow. So he and Alia shuffled modestly, more hugging than dancing. The little girl was shy and hid her eyes. Even an invitation to dance was difficult for her, and she no longer had the courage to talk. Her butt was really something, as were her legs. Cute and neat, her face was covered in glitter, and her eyelashes were extended. It was no wonder Vlad fell for her. By the way, he looked at them with envy, but Kostya just shrugged his shoulders, as if to say, it was not his fault. On the whole, Kostya liked Alia, but his thoughts were not about her at all. He thought that he should have offered Natasha to walk her home in the dark, and not these dancing schmancy, which created a wonderful reason for Alia to invite him. But the ulterior motive was still strong. After the dances, Vlad and Irina immediately rushed to the exit, carried away by each other. Vlad waved goodbye from afar. Kostya and Alia returned to the table. Their conversation did not stick. What could they talk about when she was in her early 20s and he was almost 30? So he said goodbye and headed home. The evening passed like a swift hurricane. Here it was, and now it's gone. Time speeds up when you're happy. Talking to old friends and meeting girls really distracted him, retuned him to a completely different mood. And even though nothing special happened, it seemed like he had touched happiness. Kostya walked under the rare street lamps straight through the gloomy courtyards, savoring long-forgotten feelings, savoring his return to normal life, and wondering if it was worth renting a hotel room for the night with Olenka? It would definitely not hurt him to have some fun. The baby's cry came from the darkness as Kostya entered the gloom, leaving the confines of yet another circle of light from a dim lantern. And the cry grew louder. An unusual cry. A cut squeal. As if it were rougher, more unpleasant, and more hysterical than that of an ordinary infant, and the mother tried in vain to calm her child, leaning over the stroller. Calm down. Please, she almost prayed through her tears. Please calm down. Don't scream so. Don't scream. Kostya was stomping loudly enough to be noticed in advance, but the woman still jumped when she caught movement behind her out of the corner of her eye. She straightened up abruptly and gasped. And then Kostya was able to see out of the corner of his eye what was hiding in the stroller. Not a child. God knows what. Broken, spewed out of a damned womb. Disfigured and covered in purulent ulcers. No skin on the cheeks, numerous eyes on the forehead, and temples blinked out of sync, and drool and snot dripped from the mouth like a waterfall. What the? Kostya squeezed out. He turned his gaze to the stroller at the very moment when the mother covered her child, so he could not be sure of the veracity of what he managed to see with his peripheral vision. Get out of here! The woman screamed in a mad rage. Get out of here! Or I'll call the police! Out! Get out! Kostya quickened his pace. He passed by. The woman had stepped after him, threatening to attack, but stopped, did not dare. She continued to shout and cover him with insults. A vague uneasiness crept into his soul. His heart began to pound, his stomach went cold. For some reason, he became afraid. Illogically afraid. He felt this fear with his back. What is this primordial feeling? Did Kostya feel uneasy because of the screams? Or because of what he imagined? He quickened his pace. Almost broke into a run, anticipating something inexplicably nightmarish. What stupidity! And was he really not imagining things? Kostya didn't know if he really wanted to know the answer to this question, even though he was far from being a timid person. The madwoman screamed after him for a long time. When Konstantin reached the next lamppost and looked around, expecting to see something even more terrible. The woman with the baby carriage had already disappeared into the night. Kostya walked along the gloomy streets and kept looking back. What was that? And if it was, then it couldn't be. He was probably just going crazy. And he wasn't seeing what was really there. There had already been a precedent with a telescope on the balcony, which he had mistaken for an anti-tank system. And now the same thing. What happened to the baby's head? What happened to his eyes and limbs? A chill ran down his spine just from remembering what his ghostly peripheral vision had managed to record. Yes, peripheral. Kostya hadn't managed to look straight into the stroller. A woman had blocked it at that moment. But if there was nothing there, then why did his mother literally go crazy when she found out that Kostya had seen something in her stroller? And why would you take your child out for a walk in the middle of the night? Who does that anyway? Kostya stopped in the middle of the streets. He froze. He peered into the darkness. Was no one watching him? Now the ugly eyes, blinking randomly all over his head, seemed to be following him everywhere. But the streets were empty. Only occasionally would alcoholics trudge to the 24-hour kiosks. Kostya got home. The light was on, but the curtains weren't drawn. Who does that? Everything is visible, as if in the palm of your hand. Vitya had already come home from work and was sitting at his laptop. He greeted the reveler from afar, praising him for the order he had brought during the day, and then buried himself in the monitor again. Ksyusha had locked herself in her room and was talking to someone again. Kostya closed the curtains before going to bed. Images of a baby were spinning in my head. In a warm and cozy house, all this seemed like some kind of delirium. Does such a thing ever happen? For eyes to be located on the temples? Impossible. I hallucinated. Of course. This happens to everyone, either a ghost in the hallway, or creaking at night in the darkest corner of the room. One thing is certain: what difference does it make to him? There are many disabled people in the world. And the mother screamed like that because she was embarrassed by her ugly child. That's why she only took him out at night, so that he could get some fresh air, That's why she screamed at all the passers-by who stared at the stroller. A defensive reaction. Logical. I felt sorry for that woman. It must be very hard to give birth to a horrible freak like that, whose life was ruined from the very first second, simply because the mother smoked, drank, or used drugs before and during pregnancy. Perhaps her husband left her right away. Married women do not walk alone in the middle of the night. And what would he have done in this situation? Would he have left such a wife too? It is easy to say that you will be with your other half until the end, but circumstances often change the situation. And people, under the influence of emotions, commit evil acts. Often everything comes to these separations. Ishim smoked angrily, occasionally adjusting his helmet. The heat was unbearable. Sweat poured into his eyes. Have you seen the divorce statistics? 70%. These women come and go. So don't worry, Kostian. It's normal. So she left, so what now? I feel kind of sick, guys. Konstantin gasped, trying not to inhale too deeply. The wind sometimes brought the smells of corpses rotting on the edge of their forest range into the trenches. I loved her. I thought she would wait for me. But she just found someone else. Bragged about fucking him. Imagine. To spite me, or something? Why do that? Then ask her to send the video. Gilza slapped him on the shoulder and burst out laughing. At least we'll see if she found a normal pusher. Case, shut the fuck up. Euro condemned him. Yes, I was just joking. Do you need a woman like that? Merzik snorted. And it's good that she showed her whore character now. And not when you would have made children. I spent so many years with her. Kostya said, feeling an oppressive and scorching melancholy. He had only recently learned about the betrayal. It was as if half of his soul had been cut off. That's how it is with me, recalled the experienced Ural, leaning against the wall of the trench. First she sued for the kids, the bitch. Then she turned them against me. Dad is bad. Do you want to go with him? A week without a computer then. The son of a bitch. Children are the closest people, after your mother. Your blood. And she found herself some kind of deer at that. A fucking train driver. That's it, let's go. Konstantin commanded. He was tired of talking, and it didn't calm him down at all. On the contrary, it took away all his faith in humanity. He wanted to be alone. We've eaten and then we'll go to our positions. No need to crowd around and gossip like pensioners. The birds have become more frequent, and why are they? Ishim thought, taking a drag. They're preparing the launch, I think, Euro muttered. Don't show off our goods too much. Konstantin stood up. Move Utes to a new one and cover it up better. Only when the sky is empty, watch out. Don't let them burn it down already, otherwise they'll close it down quickly. Let them think that we're sitting here with our bare asses, when they come. That's it, get the hell out of here. The guys went their separate ways, each to do his own task. Everyone was very tired in the heat, and so they were busy sluggishly, reluctantly. And Kostya was especially tired. He was devastated, burned out, like a forest regiment after an artillery barrage. So much, damn it, had fallen on him lately. And now, a bad feeling was gradually creeping over him. Oh, and such a bad feeling. An artillery shell fell right into the neighboring trench. It hit his ears, deafened him. Kostya instantly pressed himself into the bottom of the trench. The soil was thrown high up. The explosion tore out huge clumps of earth, which buried Kostya. They're coming! We need to prepare for battle. Kostya got excited, brushed the earth off himself, and the heavy blanket fell off the bed. He jumped up, gasping for air and bending over. Guys! He shouted, sliding down to the floor, trying to lower his silhouette as much as possible, just so that he wouldn't be cut by shrapnel during the next landing. That was the first part of the story. I will show you the second part tomorrow at the same time. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the new video.